Hi, everybody. This is Darlene Prides, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Living Franciscan. This is a series of informal conversations with people who self-identify as Franciscan, but without having any kind of official profession or affiliation with a congregation or order. So today I'm happy to be talking with Stephen Copeland. Hey, Stephen, how are you today?
Hey, looking forward to this. Doing well.
So tell me, Stephen, how do you self-identify as Franciscan? What does that mean to you?
Oh boy, that's a big question. Yeah, I mean, I grew up Catholic, so I was very thankful for the Catholic foundation that my parents gifted to me. A real strong moral foundation, and then the rhythm of the church year and Lent and Advent. I mean, those are very deeply impactful things, I think, into the Catholic imagination as well. The artwork in church, the visceral experience that is the Mass. But I mean, growing up, I didn't really understand what I was doing or believing in. I think a lot of people who grew up Catholic maybe feel that way. There's like a impersonal kind of dimension to it. And part of that's good as well, by the way. But I did high school, I began to really feel something, maybe not unlike Francis did, a charismatic kind of person in the Middle Ages, but I really felt something of the divine in, I guess, what you would call evangelicalism. I'm the worst Catholic ever. I was confirmed Catholic and then baptized Protestant like a year later. But, but I was following what true to me, and it was exciting. It was exciting to realize that, oh, I can read the Bible myself. I never realized that I could just open the Bible and read it and learn it. I can pray to God myself in my own vernacular. I didn't realize that either. I thought I had to be an Our Father or a Hail Mary, or I thought I had to be in a church. And so I really kind of spiraled into what would, I guess, today be called evangelicalism or conservative evangelicalism. And that was a good experience. I got a Bible degree, journalism degree in undergrad. So really hungry to get to know, like, what are these stories in this ancient text that is the Bible. But then I think in my own personality, this is not the case for everyone, but for me, I began to discover there was there were some unhealthy things in the theology that I was drawn to. One of those being the reason why Jesus came to this earth to begin with. It was really pounded into my head that it was sin, and that in order to experience God's grace, I ended up in a place that was kind of a Calvinistic strain, I would say. And I remember it really kind of being pounded into my head that, hey, if you want to experience God's grace, you need to be hyper aware of your sin. I mean, and I mean, maybe for some people that's a good thing, like maybe for some people who like aren't introspective or, like maybe that could lead to some internal awareness and some integration, forward motion. For me as a perfectionist, I mean, my view of God was this cosmic being who was just always kind of shaking his finger at me, always disappointed in me. I felt very much like I was on a performance treadmill, where you're running as hard and as fast as you can possibly go, trying to get close to God, but you're not going anywhere. And eventually, your spirituality leads to exhaustion and you fall down, slide down the treadmill, and you're looking up at God saying, I'm sorry, I'll do better next time. This is not a fun, healthy, enjoyable way to live. That dead end, I think there's a real gift that ends. taking everything, all the amazing things I learned from my experience at the Bible college. It's a liberal arts college. It was a Bible college environment with a seminary. Taking all the incredible stuff I learned there, but then figuring out what's next. And that's when I stumbled upon the writings of Brennan Manning, Thomas Merton, Richard Rohr. Um, that's when maybe through Rohr, that was the first time I heard the word Franciscan. I remember I remember always taking our dog to the parish growing up on the feast of St. Francis to be blessed by the priest, and our dog was really ornery. And you're just hoping to God that she doesn't like eat a gerbil or something, you know. She doesn't bite someone's ankle. And yeah, I particularly through Roar, and I know a lot of people at the CAC who the community there. It seems they attract a lot of ex-evangelicals, ex-evangelicals, people who don't want to give up on the Christian tradition, but feel like there's maybe something more out there. And I, within a year, this is maybe 2017. I was really getting into Richard Rohr's book, Eager to Love, um, which he wrote in response, I believe, to Pope Francis being named Pope, and then a celebration of St. Francis himself, this alternative way of St. Francis of Assisi. And I was like, oh my goodness, I thought I was a heretic for believing these things. And now here's someone finding language for a tradition that goes back far beyond Protestantism. Like far long before the Reformation. And then around that same time, I went to a Thomas Merton conference at St. Bonaventure University, and that's where the final day I was in a presentation. I think it was about Thomas Merton and jazz, and I'd already kind of resided that like I don't think academic conferences are for me. Like I just felt like the dumbest person in every single room. But this one, and I probably was, but this one really kind of resonated with me. And afterward, I did get the courage to ask a question in that presentation. And afterwards, we were right outside the library there on St. Bonaventure University's campus, and this cheerful man came up to me in a brown Bonaventure hat, and he said, "That was an amazing presentation, wasn't it?" And he just the way he said amazing and beautiful was maybe another word he used. It was very genuine, like very curious. And we struck up a conversation. I had no idea that he was a priest. I had no idea that he was a friar. And I thought he was very young, actually. And then he told me that he had known Merton's literary agent, Naomi Burton Stone, told me that he had been friends with Robert Lax, told me that he had been an activist with Martin Luther King Jr. And I mean, I was like, who the hell is this guy? And then he told me that he had founded a Franciscan mountain retreat center in the Allegheny Hills near campus called Mount Irenaeus, and his name was Father Dan Riley. And that really, between Roar and Father Dan, that really got me on the Franciscan path, I would say. And this is a very long answer to your question, but as is the case with so much of what I do creatively, like I have to get there through story. I the As I kind of explored Franciscanism, I was finding a lot of theological healing in the areas where I had experienced a lot of pain. Like I mentioned the incarnation and the reason for that. Here was Scotus saying something different. Here was Francis even um, making it a joyful celebration, kind of romanticizing it in a way, but also just so enamored with it's meant for God to become a human, a vulnerable, humble infant who's dependent on his mother's breast milk to stay alive. I mean, what a humble trajectory for the divine. I mean, that's a, and Francis, as we know, like was just invigorated by that. And it was probably a theological cornerstone for him, even though he wasn't a theologian, you know? And yeah, learning about Bonaventure and Scotus, I was like, there is something really rich here. The Bonaventure's Trinitarian uh, cosmology, his metaphysics, that uh, this made sense to me on a lot of levels. And I think Richard Rohr writes in Universal Christ, it's like he says something along the lines of the important thing was Jesus coming to earth, then God kind of sat on the sidelines for most of human history.
Mhm.
So I don't think he's saying that coming isn't the most important thing, I do think he's into a greater narrative of what is the animating force behind everything from the start, and then now we get into Trinitarian theology. So there was a lot there that was bringing me healing on a theological level. And then fast forward, Father Dan and I's relationship continued to deepen. It really got to a point of true brotherhood, I would say, as we worked on his book, Franciscan Lexio together. I was very humbled to serve him as a collaborator on that project. That itself was a Franciscan education. And then ending up meeting you, Darlene. Dr. Prides, as I called you for so long until you told me to just quit doing that. But meeting you and FST and really is someone who's kind of theologically minded. My goodness, FST continued that journey of healing for me and having just a better understanding of the roots of the tradition. And yeah, so that was a very long answer.
No, I appreciate it. I really appreciate it because you gave us, that biographical background, that evangelical base from which you jumped off. And then it sounds like you were really grabbed by a lot of the intellectual, the theological material, the different theology that you were introduced to. But I do know you a little bit, and it seems to me that the Franciscan way must be something deeper. That's my language, deeper than just mere intellectual stuff. So I wonder how you respond to that. And I really want to prompt you and ask you to tell me about this road trip that you took with Father Dan, because I'm sure that wasn't just intellectual talk all the time.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, no, you're bringing up a great point, and I think caveat too. I would say that like I was just we just had Merton's anniversary, Merton's feast day 3 days ago, and I was reading his beautiful essay, "Day of a Stranger." He wrote it maybe 3 years before his untimely death, and it he makes some really. I love Merton's later stuff because he's very playful, whereas at the beginning, fresh as a Catholic convert, he's I I would say that he's like as certain as a mystic can be, like he's prescriptive at times. Contemplation is this, it's not this. The true self is this, the false self is this. And those are, I mean, New Seeds and Seven Story Mountain, all this stuff, really amazing books that have had a big impact on my life. But then you get into his later work, like Zen and the Birds of Appetite, and he's finding himself in the realm of Eastern religions, Eastern thinking, and he has this beautiful paragraph about the contemplative life as a hermit, and then he shifts into my interpretation. I probably need a Merton scholar to really unpack this full essay, but then he shifts back. I think I have it right here actually, because he basically he's playing with the idea that like think I'm showing you the way to like fulfillment and wholeness. Like, don't think that. He says, this is not a hermitage.
Can you say
Who
that?
was that?
Can you say that again? Because your sound cut out.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
He writes, this is not a hermitage, it is a house.
Mm.
Who was that hermitage I seen with you last night? What I wear is pants. What I do is live. How I pray is breathe. Who said Zen? Wash out your mouth if you said Zen. If you see a meditation going by, shoot it. Who said love? Love is in the movies. The spiritual life is something that people worry about when they are so busy with something else they think they ought to be spiritual.
Mm.
Spiritual life is guilt. Up here in the woods is seen the New Testament. That is to say, the wind comes through the trees and you breathe it. Is it supposed to be clear? I am not inviting anybody to try it. So he's kind of saying, like, to me, I'm not trying to sell you on anything. Like, if you think there's fulfillment and wholeness here, shoot it. If you see the Buddha on the side of the road, kill it because that can't be the Buddha. And then he just finishes, or so, I am not inviting anybody to try it or suggesting that one day the message will come saying, now. That is none of my business. So, like, even with Franciscanism, I think, even though this has been a framework that's been very helpful for me, I'm very careful to do what you said. Like, this has to lead to lived experience because the second I begin to think that this contains every answer to every theological mystery, and, like, well, that's a second I should shoot it.
Yeah.
Because it cannot be, it cannot possibly, we all we have is words. I love words. I've dedicated my life to playing with words, but words will inevitably fall short of, way short of who God really is and what our life in Christ really is. So I try to remember that with anything theological, is that, yeah, these are words, and I humbly use these words, kind of throwing rocks at a window, knowing that they're going to bounce right off and fall way short. And then it has to lead to lived experience in some way. And I mean, I think that the this gets to the road trip with Father Dan Riley and the book I was really blessed to work with him on, Franciscan Lexio. The whole book is about Lexio Divina, sacred reading. And typically, this has just been a practice. It's been a monastic practice, but it's been used as one for sacred scripture. And Father Dan breaks it open and says, it's very Franciscan, like, everything is a book to be read. Your face right now, Darlene, the way you're nodding, the way you're listening, even though we're talking through screens right now, like, my dog over here, like, whimpering as she snores, like, all these things are gifts to be read, and to be read is to say that you receive it and you experience it. And Father Dan makes the kind of creative, playful leap to, he has a lot of fun with St. Clare of Assisi's letters to Agnes of Prague, and where, she invites Agnes to gaze, to consider, to contemplate, to imitate the cross. And Father Dan kind of breaks that open and says, life is a book. We gaze upon it, we consider it, we contemplate it, we imitate it. Like, all these, and I think maybe this was Rohr, Father Dan, but I think a lot of Franciscans would say that creation is the first book. For most of human history, we could not read. So, but did that mean that our ancestors weren't reading? No, they were actually reading in a deeper way than we're reading now in a lot of levels. Like, they're reading the weather, creation, relation, maybe even antagonistic relationships with warring tribes and whatever that may be. I mean, they're reading everything. Their very life depends on it. But they were probably more in touch with mystery and beauty as well. So that has been a constant challenge to me as someone who, as you can probably already tell in this conversation, you know me well, Darlene. Like I can really get up here and stay up here. And I kind of like it, because if I stay up here, I don't have to feel anything.
Mhm.
Um, the quadrants of St. Clair, as Father Dan calls them, creatively, those really invite me into lived experience that, hey, maybe I'm putting my kids to bed and it's just been a crappy day and I'm just like exhausted and maybe it wasn't easy at night with the kiddos and they're tired and they're ornery and they're pushing their boundaries and all I'm trying to do, bathed,
Mhm.
teeth brush, get them, get their pajamas on, read them a book, and get them to bed as quick as possible and get the hell out of there so I can just, so I can just binge a show on Netflix or something and relax. Well, Franciscan Lexio invites me to say, like, that can be true. The exhaustion can be there, the fatigue, the anxiety, all the things that are playing in my head, that can all be true, but also you know, look into your son's eyes there in the bathtub and, really read and consider and contemplate this hilarious thing that he just said, and God is there somehow. And that doesn't mean like I think sometimes with a lot of spiritual practice, it gets back in the Merton passage, like it gets romanticized or it's portrayed as blissful or euphoric. Like that's usually not the case for me with Franciscan Lexio. It's, the anxiety's still there. I'm still tired, but something now. I'm reading something and it's enough. It even on like the smallest level, it's doing something to my brain even to reorient it to focus on the gift that this moment is, and then you move on to the next moment and maybe there's something to read there too. So that has been a constant challenge for me, as someone who tends to get stuck in my head is read this, receive this,
Yeah.
it's here for you. Yeah.
I just think that's really an interesting analogy or practice to read everything. As someone who practices in a Buddhist context, in addition to a Franciscan context, um, I cultivate a sense of presence, being with what is. But what I'm hearing from you is you are reading everything. Um, and that means you're seeing. It relies on sight. Uh,
Yes.
can you talk
Yeah, and it was,
about the
yeah, go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about the other senses, how they are involved in your understanding or your living out of the Franciscan way?
Yeah, no, that's very important actually. And Father Dan would come back to that a lot. And I think he uses a passage from Bonaventure's Itinerarium as like kind of a basis for this. If I can find it real quick. Uh, yeah, this is Bonaventure. First, therefore, I invite the reader to the groans of prayer through Christ crucified, through whose blood we are cleansed from the filth of vice, so that he not believe that reading is sufficient without unction, speculation without devotion, investigation without wonder, observation without joy, work without piety, knowledge without love, understanding without humility. So the way I kind of receive that is this cannot just be an intellectual exercise. This is open your senses to the senses themselves are gateways to mystery, and yeah, I think that's so important today. Sensual, Father Dan would always talk about this. Like when we think sensual, we've made in our culture, we've made that out to mean sexual, you know. Well, sensual is far beyond that, the Greek notion of eros, like this is an embodied experience, like you wake up in the morning, you don't just drink the coffee, you smell it, you really you, you try to you listen to the beans being ground up, like these in as you kind of in Thich Nhat Hanh has that great passage. I think we've talked about this before about the piece of paper. He kind of concludes like the whole universe is actually in this piece of paper. Like this piece of paper would not be here without the cloud and the sun and the rain and the tree and the logger, like all these elements that went into this single piece of paper. Um, all these all these things, I think, helps to open up our senses, which really helps us to take in the gift more fully.
Yeah, so can I play the devil's advocate or bring
Oh
up
yeah,
the
yeah, please.
uncomfortable part of the Franciscan tradition? Because if we
Yeah,
look at the lives and the lived experience of Francis and of Clare, neither of them treated their bodies very well. Neither of them
yeah,
relished,
yeah,
the morsels of bread and gave themselves the freedom, the invitation
yeah.
to enjoy their bodies. And I think I'm guilty of this too, but I think a lot of us still idealize the Franciscan way, just in different ways.
Hmm.
We're no longer with Zeffirelli running through the fields and listening to Donovan music. But what do you say to that? I mean, I think we're kind of idealizing this sensuality of the Franciscan way because certainly in the lived experience of Francis and Clare, and that's where I ground my
Hmm.
spirituality in lived experience rather than in male theologians. But what do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why earlier, and this comes from Father Dan, like he really goes back to our ancestors too, like, like how are they reading and experiencing things, because yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's like on one level, like this was experiencing and enjoying God in places where the church, even at times, like when it came to the Crusades, were saying God cannot be there. Like the this Muslim army needs to be exterminated. Like the and Francis is finding God there. So on one level, like there is a movement and a trajectory of that that thing, that person, that bedtime that you're just trying to get through. Don't you dare write that off. You know, like God could be right there.
Yeah.
God is there. Can I become aware of it? Can I become aware of the beauty that's in this moment? And yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Like around, these are Claire and Francis are byproducts of the Middle Ages and penance, and probably not a real great self view as it came to their bodies, at least. I mean, and yeah, okay, yeah. Like I think, and I can do that too sometimes. Like there's ways that I do that where, so they're human,
Yeah.
and to me that's part of their appeal. So yeah, and as far as the romanticization of it, yeah, it's this goes back to the Merton passage. I think there's a real danger with anything that it becomes a pathway to certainty. If there's one thing certain about, it's that I don't want to be certain. So it's like it's the kind of mystic in me is that okay, yes, I'm using Franciscan language right now. To me, that has helped me get close to the mystery, to close to describing the mystery. But I may use different language tomorrow. I'll probably certainly use different language in a year. I mean, in 5 years, in 10 years. And because these are just words. And then maybe I'll return to my evangelical language at some point. I mean, all these, everything is important to help us to unearth beauty and goodness, and how it's right here in our lives. And we are to open our senses to experiencing it. But easier said than done.
Well, so it sounds like you're holding this all lightly, and this notion of uncertainty really brings to my mind the Buddhist concept of practicing don't know mind. So I look forward to talking to you in a year and seeing how you have perhaps entered into Buddhist language, perhaps
Yeah. Yep.
add here. Um, I don't know. I'm curious to know how you as a parent are rearing your children, and does the Franciscan way enter into this? You've talked about bath time and bedtime, but anything else around parenting?
Yeah. No, I mean, we're still determining, my wife and I were still determining how we are going to raise our children. What church, we haven't come to any clear answers there yet. To be honest, it's for me in my relationship with them. I mean, like lately it's been music. Like my 1 year old daughter, it's so cute. Like I'll be doing dishes in the kitchen or something, and I'll feel her, at my knees, and I'll look down, and she just puts her hands up,
Hmm.
and I'll lift her up, and then she starts like jumping up and down. She wants me to start a song. She wants me to start a song and play it and dance with her for a little bit. And yeah, as for Franciscanism and how language can maybe uh, help to depict, explain that experience. I mean, it kind of goes back to a lot of what we just said. It's like I kind of had an agenda there, like I was trying to get something done, but here is this gift, and she's inviting me. Now she's the one inviting me. Like she's the one forming my heart. And then how she forms my heart and how I allow her to form my heart is inevitably going to help form her heart, by my willingness to spend time with her in this place that I would describe as nowhere, like we're not going anywhere. Like I think my children will probably remember me by the time I was willing to spend with them in nowhere, you know. And there will be things to do. There will be athletic events to get to, and ways we'll have to push them, and certainly linear things where nope, like you're going to school, you have to do your homework. Like nope, you made a commitment to be on the soccer team. I know you don't like it, but like you made a commitment, you got to stick to it. So like there will be those conversations, but also like I hope I can always hold on to a certain willingness to, in an awareness of my own linear thinking, and how so often, and this isn't me beating myself up, but so often I I don't allow myself to get into that spiral into nowhere, where I'm just dancing with my daughter. Instead, you know, I gotta get this done, gotta get this done, gotta get this done. Both are needed, both are important, but in our culture, um, I think we think too linearly. And Franciscanism, it's like Francis was not a linear person,
No, he was.
like at all. I mean, very challenging and inspiring to me. Um, if nothing else, I think we can say he was a very present person and always willing to, not always, but story after story, willing to go somewhere that you wouldn't expect him to go, or perhaps he wasn't even expecting to go, and finding God in that place. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've touched on lots of different aspects of your self-identity as a Franciscan. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring forward that hasn't come up yet?
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, it's a beautiful tradition. Like I'm deeply grateful to FST and you and my coworkers at Franciscan Media. And I mean, this is a it's a wonderful space to play and to like anything. Of course, there's frustrations, and but I mean, yeah, it's a tradition that has really helped and continues to help form me and inform me in the most challenging ways. I mean, with parenting, like it is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I mean, my first spiritual memoir took me 7 years to write. My second one took me 6 years to write. This one that I'm writing right now about my road trip with Father Dan. I mean, God, who knows how long that's going to take me to write? Like I've done some hard things creatively. None of it comes close to parenting for me. And my wife does it more naturally. These ages are it's a it's difficult for me. It's very difficult, but the tradition speaks to me in that, and says, yeah, go to nowhere,
Yeah,
go to nowhere with, so yeah, I think that's the only thing I would add.
yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thanks for sharing so much of yourself and your experience of the Franciscan way with us.
Yeah, apologize if it was dizzying at all, but thanks for your patience.
No apologies needed. Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks.